Have you noticed how some people become strangely quiet when February arrives, as if the world is celebrating something they can't quite feel? You see everyone around you posting roses and candle-lit dinners, exchanging gifts wrapped in red paper, performing rituals that seem easy for others, yet something inside you tightens. You scroll past the noise with a practiced neutrality, telling yourself it's just another day, nothing special, nothing worth reacting to. But beneath that simplicity is a story, a quiet one, etched into the deeper places you rarely show anyone. Maybe you've felt it too, that strange emotional distance the moment the month turns pink. Not anger, not cynicism, just a subtle withdrawal, as if love has suddenly become a performance you never learned the choreography for. You watch people celebrate easily, loudly, confidently, while you pull back into the safety of your inner world. And it's easy for others to misunderstand this withdrawal. They call it being anti-love, or cold, or uninterested. But the truth is far softer and far more complicated than that. Sometimes the ones who avoid Valentine's Day are the same ones who feel love the deepest. They're the ones who learned early that affection wasn't predictable, or safe, or given without consequences. They grew up in environments where tenderness was inconsistent, or where special days meant pressure, arguments, or silence. And now, even as adults, the sight of a heart-shaped balloon can awaken old memories they thought had faded. You don't consciously remember those moments, the unmet expectations, the quiet rooms, the careful footsteps, but your nervous system does. It whispers caution where others feel excitement. Even people who are in relationships feel this quiet resistance. They love their partner, yet something about this one day feels heavy, artificial, or strangely exposing. It's not romance they fear, it's the expectation attached to it. The requirement to perform love in a way that matches the world's script. You sense the weight of comparison, the curated posts, the grand gestures, the idea that love must look a certain way. And without realizing it, you retreat. Not because you lack affection, but because you're protecting something delicate inside you. What if the real reason you don't celebrate Valentine's Day has nothing to do with rebellion or indifference, and everything to do with memory, safety, and the emotional blueprint you inherited long before you ever knew what love meant? So you pull away quietly, telling yourself it's just a preference. But every preference has a beginning, and yours might trace back further than you think, all the way to the first place you learned what love felt like and what it didn't. Let's go there next. Have you ever noticed how the earliest memories of love rarely look like the movies? Sometimes they appear in flashes, the muted tone of a living room, where no one spoke gently, the uneasy silence that followed a slammed door, the way affection felt unpredictable, like weather you could never forecast. You grow up believing this is normal. That love is something you tiptoe around, not something you relax into. And without realizing it, this becomes the blueprint your nervous system studies long before you learn the language of romance. Maybe you were the quiet child in the classroom on Valentine's Day, watching other kids exchange cards with sparkly hearts and cartoon characters. They shared them easily, laughing, running, dipping into that innocent ritual without hesitation. But you sat still, unsure what to do, feeling something unfamiliar tighten inside your chest. You didn't know whether you were allowed to participate, or whether anyone would notice if you didn't. For some children, that moment becomes the first quiet lesson that love might be something that belongs to others, not to them. When affection in your home was rare, or conditional, or swallowed by chaos, you learn quickly that emotional warmth was never guaranteed. A hug could depend on your behavior. Kindness depended on the mood of the adults. Special days might have meant raised voices, forgotten promises, or a parent who simply didn't show up. Your body remembers that unpredictability. Neuropsychologists often say that a child's brain wires itself around whatever it must survive, and so you learn to manage your expectations, to brace yourself against hope, to become emotionally self-sufficient before you even knew the word for it. And so, celebrations, the days that were supposed to feel soft and picture perfect, often carried a strange heaviness. A birthday that ended in tears, a holiday where someone was drunk, a moment where you tried too hard and still felt invisible. These experiences teach you something quietly devastating, that special days come with pressure, and pressure comes with disappointment. The child in you internalizes it long before the adult in you can explain it. Years later, when the world turns pink for Valentine's Day, something old wakes up beneath your ribs. You feel a slight tightening, an instinctive pulling away, as if your body is saying, "Be careful." This is the kind of day where expectations hurt. It isn't logical, it isn't conscious. It's a memory coded into the nervous system, shaped by emotional patterns you never chose but were forced to adapt to. Avoidance becomes protection, not rebellion. Silence becomes safety, not indifference. And the child who once didn't know how to participate grows into an adult who quietly steps outside the ritual altogether. When these children grow up, they don't reject Valentine's Day, they reject the vulnerability it demands. Have you ever caught yourself shrugging at something that secretly mattered to you, as if pretending not to care could protect you from the sting of wanting? It's a quiet skill you don't, to remember learning. Yet it appears effortlessly when February comes around. You joke about Valentine's Day being silly. You laugh at the commercials, mock the heart-shaped clichés, or say it's all just marketing, and people believe you because the mask you wear is convincing. It has been crafted over years, shaped from childhood moments when vulnerability cost more than it offered. But deep down, you know the mask doesn't say, "I don't care." It says something softer, more fragile. "I don't want to be hurt again." Neuroscience suggests that the adult brain continues to protect the child you once were, guarding old emotional wounds like a shadow that never fully dissolves. So when a day arrives that demands romance, a day the world treats as an emotional exam, you instinctively retreat, not because you lack feeling, but because feeling has always carried consequences. You see this mask in everyday moments. Someone asks what your plans are, and you casually respond, "Nothing. It's just another day." Someone tries to surprise you, and instead of warmth, you feel an uncomfortable tightening, like you've been handed something you don't know how to hold. You prefer ordinary days, days without spectacle or pressure, where affection can unfold naturally and not through a script the world has written for you. Symbolic days feel sharp, too bright, too exposing, as if they magnify everything you'd rather keep tucked in the quieter corners of your heart. There's also the subtle fear of disappointing others. What if you try and it isn't enough? What if the gift you choose doesn't land the way it should? What if someone sees the vulnerability you've spent years hiding? So instead of risking emotional exposure, you choose distance, you choose humor, you choose indifference. These choices are not failures, they are protective instincts. Attachment theory calls them avoidant strategies, the nervous system's way of keeping you safe by keeping you separate. And for some people, Valentine's Day becomes a reminder of past heartbreak, the empty chair at a dinner table, the message that never came, the relationship that collapsed under its own weight. Avoidance becomes a shield, a soft, invisible armor. You tell yourself, if I don't celebrate, I can't be disappointed. If I never open the door, nothing painful can walk through it. But this mask isn't just emotional. Psychology has names for these patterns. And understanding them means peeling back a layer you've long believed was part of your personality, when in truth, it may only be protection. Have you ever wondered why a single date on the calendar can stir up a feeling you can't quite name, as if something old and buried has quietly awakened inside you? It's strange how Valentine's Day can trigger discomfort even when nothing dramatic happens. You're not heartbroken, you're not angry, and yet something feels off, like a shadow passing behind your ribs. Psychology has a name for this: emotional memory, the idea that your body remembers experiences long after your conscious mind has forgotten them. Attachment theory suggests that the way you learn to love as a child becomes the blueprint your adult nervous system follows. If affection was unpredictable, if love felt earned rather than given, or if emotional closeness came with chaos, you may have developed what researchers call an avoidant attachment style. It's not that you don't want connection, it's that connection awakens a nervous system built for survival, not softness. When holidays like Valentine's Day pressure you into romantic vulnerability, your body responds with the same protective instinct it used in childhood: distance. Neuroscience shows that the brain forms strong associations between emotional experiences and rituals. If special days once meant conflict, disappointment, or emotional absence, your amygdala, the part of the brain that detects emotional threats, remembers. It fires small warning signals when similar cues appear. A decorated store window, a romantic movie, the date 14. This isn't overreaction, it's conditioning. A study on emotional triggers revealed that negative memories link more strongly with sensory cues than positive ones, because cortisol enhances the brain's retention of pain. So when Valentine's Day arrives, your emotional system isn't reacting to teddy bears or roses. It's reacting to what those symbols once meant. Dopamine, the chemical of anticipation, doesn't rise the way it does for others. Instead, cortisol quietly takes its place, preparing you for disappointment you're not even expecting. You feel emotionally numb, not because you lack capacity for love, but because numbness was once the safest way to survive emotional danger. Behavioral psychologists call this protective avoidance, stepping back before anything can hurt you. Not. Celebrating Valentine's Day becomes less about dislike and more about maintaining emotional equilibrium. Avoidance isn't cynicism, it's a nervous system shaped by experience, choosing safety over uncertainty. And yet, if you look closely, you'll notice this reaction feels too deep, too instinctive, too familiar to be about one holiday. It carries the weight of something older, something that began long before your adult life. Science can map the neurons and name the patterns, but it cannot fully explain the silent ache underneath them, the part of you that still flinches at the idea of being seen, chosen, or loved without conditions. But science only explains the surface. There is a darker, emotional layer. Have you ever wondered why love, a feeling so warm in theory, can sometimes feel like standing naked under a harsh light? There's a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when the thought of being cherished makes your chest tighten instead of soften. It's not that you don't want closeness. It's that closeness feels like exposure, like opening a door you've kept locked for years because you're not sure what someone might find on the other side. Some people are not afraid of roses. They are afraid of what roses remind them of, the wounds they still carry. The petals, the sweetness, the softness, all of it touches old places inside you that were never healed. Valentine's Day becomes a mirror, reflecting the parts you've tried to outgrow. The heartbreak you pretended didn't break you. The rejection you said didn't matter. The memory of giving love freely and receiving silence in return. These moments accumulate quietly, becoming emotional ghosts that haunt you long after the people involved are gone. You may recognize the fear without knowing its name. The fear of being seen too deeply. The fear of not being enough when someone finally looks closely. The fear that if you allow yourself to want something as delicate as affection, it might slip through your fingers the way it did before. Neuroscience calls this anticipatory threat response, when the brain reacts to imagined pain as if it's happening now. Your heart remembers disappointments vividly, storing them like fragile glass within the nervous system. And whenever a ritual like Valentine's Day approaches, those glass pieces rattle, so you tell yourself you're fine without it. You convince yourself that it's silly, unnecessary, overhyped. But beneath those explanations lives a quieter truth. Wanting something you don't feel safe enough to receive is its own form of suffering. There is an ache that comes from longing, while simultaneously bracing for loss. It is the emotional paradox of many adults to desire intimacy and fear it at the same time, like reaching for warmth with hands that still flinch from past burns. Perhaps you still remember the moment you first realized you were easy to leave, or the time you tried to show your heart and someone walked away anyway. These memories nest under your ribs like shadows, shaping how you respond to love even years later. And so, when a day arrives that celebrates romance, that demands vulnerability, your instinct is to retreat, not because you dislike love, but because love feels like standing in front of a storm without shelter. This is the hidden darkness behind Valentine's Day avoidance, not apathy, but self-protection. Not coldness, but fear, stitched carefully into your emotional fabric. And the world we live in makes this fear even harder to face. Have you ever noticed how love changes the moment it becomes something you're expected to perform? It stops being a quiet feeling in your chest and turns into a spectacle, something measured in gifts, dinners, and perfectly captured moments. Valentine's Day amplifies this pressure until even the most genuine emotions begin to feel staged, as if the world is watching to see whether you pass some unspoken test. And if you've always struggled with vulnerability, that pressure doesn't feel romantic, it feels suffocating. You see it everywhere. The glittering storefronts, the heart-shaped advertisements, the curated posts of couples smiling beneath soft lighting. Social media transforms intimacy into a scoreboard where people measure their worth through the reactions they receive. You scroll past it all, feeling a strange mix of detachment and heaviness. Not because you're against love, but because the love you understand isn't loud, isn't flashy, isn't meant to be displayed like a trophy. It's quieter, more fragile, like a garden that grows best away from the world's eyes. But society teaches you something different. It whispers that if you don't participate, if you don't buy the flowers or post the photo or make the grand gesture, then maybe you don't love at all. There's a myth that hangs over Valentine's Day like a shadow, the idea that celebrating it makes you loving and avoiding it makes you damaged. And you've probably felt that sting, the judgment, the assumptions, the subtle questioning of your emotional capacity. People forget that your heart might just work differently, shaped by experiences they cannot see. For someone who already carries the fear of being seen too deeply, these expectations feel like a spotlight. Neuroscience shows that social pressure activates the same stress centers as physical threat, raising your cortisol levels and tightening your chest. So when Valentine's Day demands that you prove your affection, it doesn't feel like an opportunity. It feels like exposure, like being asked to hand over a part of yourself you've spent years protecting. And here lies the quiet tragedy. Performative love often overshadows genuine love. You begin to question whether affection only matters when others can witness it, whether intimacy is only real when it's photographed. whether the depth of your heart can be measured by how well you imitate a ritual that never truly belonged to you. Philosophers have long warned about this, the danger of confusing the symbol for the substance, mistaking the gesture for the feeling. Love that depends on a single day becomes fragile, bending under expectations and breaking under comparison. Love that breathes in ordinary moments, far from the noise, becomes overlooked. And beneath this pressure, emotional consequences slowly build. Have you ever felt a kind of loneliness that doesn't hurt loudly, but softly, like a faint echo inside your chest that no one else seems to hear? It's the loneliness that appears not when you're abandoned, but when you've spent years learning to abandon your own needs. Valentine's Day has a way of magnifying that feeling without saying a word, not because you crave the rituals themselves, but because the day forces you to notice the spaces inside you that have gone untouched for too long. Picture this: a person sitting in their room on February 14th. The lights are dim, the world outside is painted in red and gold, and yet inside, everything feels muted. They aren't sad, not in the dramatic, cinematic way people imagine. Instead, they feel strangely numb, as if the day is happening on the other side of thick glass. They scroll past the celebrations, not with jealousy, but with a quiet distance, like someone watching a life they were never taught how to enter. You might recognize a piece of yourself in that stillness. The emotional consequences of avoiding romantic rituals don't always show up as heartbreak. Sometimes they appear as a slow erosion of connection, feeling unseen, even by people who care about you, feeling disconnected during moments that should feel intimate, or struggling to express affection without a knot tightening in your throat. Neuroscience calls this emotional blunting, a protective mechanism where your brain reduces emotional intensity to keep you safe. But safety comes with a price. You begin to feel less of everything, not just the pain. In relationships, this can create a distance no one can quite name. You care deeply, yet you struggle to show it. You love sincerely, yet you hesitate before reaching out. The people in your life may sense the gap but not understand it, and you may find yourself wishing you could bridge it while simultaneously fearing the vulnerability required to do so. It becomes a quiet paradox, wanting closeness but staying behind invisible walls, longing to be understood while hiding the parts of yourself that need understanding most. Over time, this emotional silence can create resentment toward yourself, a soft ache where affection should be. You begin to wonder why connection feels so difficult for you, why gestures others find simple feel like crossing a fragile bridge made of glass. And on nights like Valentine's Day, the truth becomes clearer. Avoidance protected you, but it also isolated you. But this doesn't mean something is broken, it means something needs healing. Have you ever noticed how healing never arrives with fireworks? It doesn't knock on your door wearing confidence or demand that you transform overnight. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a small shift in the way you breathe when you finally give yourself permission to feel something you've been avoiding for years. Healing starts in the softest places, the ones you've spent a lifetime protecting. You begin by looking inward, not with judgment, but with curiosity. You start to understand that the way you respond to Valentine's Day, to intimacy, to affection, was shaped long before adulthood. Your emotional blueprint wasn't a choice. It was a survival map drawn in childhood, designed to keep you safe when love felt unstable or unpredictable. And once you recognize that, even faintly, something inside you loosens. You realize you aren't cold. You aren't unromantic. You're someone who learned to guard your heart because it was the only way to protect it. Healing then becomes less about forcing yourself to celebrate anything and more about reclaiming the parts of you that stopped trusting love. It's in the small acts of vulnerability, replying honestly when someone asks how you're feeling, letting your voice soften when you want to pull away, allowing yourself to hope just a little without assuming disappointment is waiting around the corner. Neuroscience shows that the brain rewires through repetition, through gentle exposure to safety, not through pressure. Every small emotional risk you take becomes a new pathway, a new possibility. You start to reframe love itself. You begin to see that affection doesn't live in grand gestures or commercial rituals. It's in the way someone listens to you without rushing, the warmth in their voice when they say your name, the silence you feel safe inside. You learn to appreciate the quiet forms of love, the ones that don't need an audience, the garden that grows slowly, watered from within. And somewhere along the way, you realize your worth never depended on how well you performed love. Your value wasn't tied to how many gifts you bought or how romantic you appeared on a single day. It existed long before the world told you how love should look. Healing becomes the process of meeting yourself again, the version of you who once believed love was simple, safe, and natural to give. You begin to speak honestly in relationships, not to impress or to fit in, but to be understood. You explain what scares you, what soothes you, what makes your heart open or close. And in that honesty, something beautiful begins to shift. Love becomes possible again, not as a performance, but as a gentle returning to your own humanity. Because at the end of it all, this story isn't about Valentine's Day, it's about the human heart. Have you ever noticed how real love rarely arrives dressed in roses or wrapped in glitter? It doesn't wait for February or require a reservation to make itself known. It slips quietly into your life in the softest, most ordinary ways. The warmth of someone remembering your favorite tea, the gentle tone in their voice when they sense you're tired, the unspoken comfort of sitting beside someone without needing to prove anything. Love, the real kind, doesn't depend on a date. It doesn't bloom louder on one day and fade on the next. It simply exists, steady and unperforming, like a heartbeat you forget to notice. You may have spent your whole life believing that your way of loving was too quiet, too invisible, too different from the world's expectations. Maybe you felt out of place in a culture that celebrates affection with grandeur, where intimacy is photographed, posted, measured in reactions and symbols. But there is nothing small about loving quietly. Some of the deepest forms of love move without. Spectacle like a river carving through stone, slow but powerful, reshaping everything it touches. Think of the child you once were, the one who believed that love came with conditions or could disappear without warning. Think of the adult you became, learning to protect your heart before offering it. Your hesitation was never proof of emotional emptiness. It was the language you learned to survive. And just as languages differ, so does the way you express and seek affection. Some people love loudly, with flowers and fireworks. Others love in silence, with presence and patience. Both are valid. Both are real. Avoiding Valentine's Day doesn't mean you don't care about love. It means your relationship with love has a history, a texture, a depth the world doesn't see. It means your heart learned to trust slowly, to move carefully, to bloom in seasons that have nothing to do with the calendar. And that is not a flaw, it is a truth, your truth. There is a kind of love that doesn't need display, doesn't need validation, doesn't need a single date to prove its existence. A love that grows gradually, like a garden watered by understanding rather than pressure. A love that thrives in ordinary moments, in the way you protect the people you care about, even when you struggle to say the words, in the way your presence softens when someone needs you, in the way you continue to hope for connection, even after years of protecting yourself from it. So let yourself breathe. Let yourself exist without comparing your heart to anyone else's. Because the journey you're on is not about performing love, but understanding it. not about meeting expectations, but rewriting them. Some people don't celebrate Valentine's Day because they are still learning how to celebrate themselves. And maybe that is the most honest form of love there is, the quiet beginning of coming home to your own heart.